How did your career start in hospitality, and has it always been your passion?
So I started in 1982 in Vancouver, Canada, where I was born. And it was just happen circumstance. It was a summer job between grade 11 and grade 12. And it was a dishwashing job in a hotel in Vancouver. So I really enjoyed it, and then back to grade 12 and graduated, and that hotel company called me and said, would you like to return? And so I thought, I don't really have anything planned for the summer, so why not? So I really enjoyed it, and it really felt comfortable. And I really enjoyed with the people, the teamwork, meeting different people. And that's really what began this whole crazy adventure. And I learned at that time, I think that I had something very special interest with people and learning about people and working with people. And that was 1982, so it's been over 40 years and taken me to the highest mountains of the world and the deepest oceans of the world, and have really had an adventure of a lifetime. Very blessed, and to meet so many incredible people, both from our colleagues that I work with and from the guests.
Tell us a bit how you got to Capella Ubud, Bali, and what do you look forward the most about being the general manager?
So my journey here came in 2019, and I was in the Kingdom of Bhutan, and at that time I was returning back to Bali, where my home is, and a former colleague of mine had called me and said, there is a very special property here, and we're in need of a general manager. So I said, well, I'll be back in Bali, and let's have a look. So when I came here, I could see how incredibly unique it was, and how different it was. And what I also really enjoyed was the sustainability aspect to it. It really protected the environment and had this wonderful ethos, the concept of the heritage of Indonesia, of Bali, the sustainability aspect, and that really resonated with me, being a big fan of Indonesia and sustainability.
You mentioned that Capella Ubud Bali is very unique in its open concept. How would you describe it to someone who has never been before?
So Capella Ubud really takes you, it's escaping into a story. And we go back in time in the 19th century when tall sail ships used to anchor off the shores of Kuta, and they would see these rivers and they would follow them up to this area, and they would create a camp, and they were trading in spices and coffee and cloves and fruit. And when the season changes from the wet season to the dry season, of course, our trade wind shifts. So they disassemble the camp and they go back to their ship, and they take that trade wind and they go back past the southern Cape of Africa and back to Europe. So our architect, Bill Bensley, he takes this concept of the 19th century, of trading, of the camp, and he elevates it to a very colorful and a very playful experience. So it's very unique. It's really an expedition of discovery. And also you're surrounded in the forest and in green, and on your doorstep you have the rice terraces. And we're in the artist hamlet of Kaliki. So there's just so much to discover here. And so it really is an escape into the culture of Bali.
Capella Ubud Bali has a very unique concept that can be considered quite niche. What do you think is the biggest challenge of the resort, and how do you go about overcoming that?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a lot of challenges. Bali is growing very quickly, as is the tourism in Indonesia. Our biggest challenge is being creative. We opened with an incredibly creative and unique property. We need to challenge ourselves to go even further. We need to set the trend. We don't follow the trend. We need to set the trend. We need curated experiences that nobody else is doing. We want to uncover these hidden treasures for people. Whether it's a personality of an artist that's in their home that nobody has discovered, and an incredible personality, to the most spiritual, natural beauty you've ever seen in your life as the sun is coming up and the rays are going down and you're in this very secluded rice terrace and all you hear are the birds and Mother Nature, singing with you. This is the kind of thing we always want to pursue, that creativity, that pursuit of something very unique. And so keeping people inspired and going and having that enthusiasm of creativity.
Mark, how would you characterize your style of leadership?
My leadership, is really, I don't like to box it in one particular style because I think depending on what is required, I may be a little bit more participative or I may be a little bit more directive it really depends. For instance, if the pandemic is coming, we don't know what's going on and everybody's looking up. Very hard to be participative in that. In that particular time, you've got to be directive.
Yeah.
But in a scenario like when we're trying to be creative and we're trying to develop things, wonderful to be participative and get people involved, create, inspire. And when you see that wow moment, that, wow, this is really different, it's very unique. It's really, that's where I get my greatest pride, when I can see that. When you know somebody and you're nurturing some leadership and they're getting it. They're creating themselves and you're opening the door and letting them go to discover it themselves, how to do that. That's really rewarding.
What advice would you give to someone who's just getting into the hospital industry for the first time?
It's an incredible industry. It's a very exciting industry and one that's growing around the world. But you first need to know that it's meant for you, because it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And you're working on Edelfitri, you're working on Christmas, you're working on during Nippy, weekends, what's that? You have to be incredibly committed and you have to sacrifice. Definitely a hotel is, in the hospitality industry, is very dynamic and beautiful to be in and to meet people and to be creative. If you want to move in leadership, you need to do it very quickly. It's a very high energy industry. So to avoid burnout, you need to get ahead as quickly as possible. And yeah, like I mentioned, you really need to just have the passion for it. Commit yourself. The more you put into it, the more you're going to receive back. And I mean, that you could be said for everything in life, but especially so in the hospitality industry. Okay. And really have to enjoy being around people.